Hi and welcome back to Classicmgb. Now today I'm going to try and show you about a problem that I think I'm going to be able to fix. And it actually comes from a gap at the bottom of the garage door. Leaves and all sorts of rubbish, dust gets in and gets the car dirty. So I was at MG Fest North recently talking to a good friend of mine, Wayne Blake, who is also a viewer. And he said, oh, you want to get this special stuff and it just seals the door really well. I thought, oh, great. He said, go to Screwfix. So I went to Screwfix. The only problem is the gap underneath our door is a bit too big. So I came across a company called Garadry. Now Garadry provide the special rubbery stuff that you need to do, and they do it in various different lengths and obviously various different depths. So I went for a 25mm, and it comes in a kit. So you get the sealant, but of course, it's not as simple as just sticking it down. You have to prepare the ground. So the first step is to grind off the paint that's on there and make sure, using this Sikabond stuff, we get a good seal on the concrete, so then this adhesive will stick. Now, because I do have a breathing problem and I have a wonderful son called Josh, he's actually going to do most of the hard graft. Okay, so here we are at the front of the garage, and this is the material we're using, this Garadry 25mm, and you can see it's a bit like those sort of things you put over cables on walkways and things. So it's pretty rigid, you can drive over it. It's also fairly easy to cut, and you can see we've cut a little bit off because the piece we got was slightly too long, by about 6 inches. So first step is to position it roughly and then let the door down and then ease it up towards the gap so it fits nicely. So let's shut the garage door. So down comes the garage door, a powered door. I tell you what, if you ever get a chance to get a powered door, get one, so it's great. Now, I don't know if you can see the light coming under, but it's actually quite a lot of light there. So what I'm going to do now is just gently ease the material up towards the door. So we've got a really nice seal. Now, you have to be a little bit careful with an electric door because if you put too much resistance in it and it touches, it'll flick back up. So we've got to be a little bit careful. So I'm going to work my way along with that, just easing it back towards, and then I'm going to let Josh take over for the real hard graft. The instructions provided with the kit are very comprehensive. If you have any queries, there's a real person from the company available on the phone during normal office hours. We know this because we wanted clarification on how best to prepare the concrete floor before applying the adhesive. We spoke to a lovely chap in customer services that gave us all the advice we needed. It's always nice when you buy a product, however simple, to have someone to call if you've got any questions. Anyhow, once we'd firmed up the process, it was on to the first stage, marking the floor where the threshold seal would be installed. Once the position had been established, we used a marker pen to clearly mark either edge of the seal. It's important, of course, that once the seal has been positioned, it shouldn't be moved before the marking process is finished. Once the marking was complete, the seal was removed and it was time for the messy bit. Because we weren't sure how effective the old paint was at sealing the concrete, we decided to use a flat disc to remove all the paint to leave bare concrete, which could then be sealed properly. Having donned appropriate PPE, Josh proceeded to grind away the paint, being careful to ensure the marker lines were still visible. As you can see, the dust went everywhere, but needless to say, the MGB wasn't anywhere near. Of course, all that dust on the floor needed to be cleared before we could apply the sealer, so it was out with the trusty Henry Hoover to clear all the dust up. Next was the sealing stage, where we used Sikabond SBR+, which we got from our local builder's merchant. It was recommended as a really effective way to seal concrete, and this is really important to ensure the adhesive sticks well. Once complete, it was off for a well-earned tea break and a few hours wait to make sure the sealer had completely dried before we were ready to apply the adhesive and install the threshold seal. So, after a suitable pause, the next step was to mark out exactly where the adhesive will be applied. The instructions say to mark a line 1 centimetre inside the edge marking on either side of the outer marker lines. This is to allow the adhesive to expand when the threshold seal is installed and pressed down. Once the sides are marked, the next step was to mark a wavy line in between the inner markings. These marks then made it easy to see exactly where to apply the adhesive. For the length of threshold seal we chose, there were 2 adhesive cartridges supplied, so with the first one prepared and loaded into the mastic gun, it was time to apply the gunge. To do this with everything marked up was a simple task. Simply follow the lines. We found that both cartridges were enough to cover all the lines with a nice even bead of adhesive. One word of warning though, this stuff is incredibly sticky. Despite not being very involved in the process, I managed to get a little on my hands, and it took a liberal amount of fast orange hand cleaner to remove it. You have been warned. However, all went smoothly, and before long, Josh was laying the strip down on the adhesive and pressing it firmly home, adjusting as necessary to align to the marked outer lines. The final step was to close the garage door and check the threshold strip was in the correct position and didn't need a little fettling before the adhesive cured. Thankfully it was, and as you can see from this shot, it certainly closed the gap very effectively. However, once installed, Garadry recommend that you leave the threshold strip at least 24 hours before driving over it to allow the adhesive to cure fully, which meant that my beloved MGB GT was left ungaraged for the night. Luckily, it didn't rain. So now it's a couple of days later, and we'd actually left it 24 hours before doing anything, driving over it or anything, just to make sure the gunge had sealed and cured properly. And I have to say it has, and it's pretty solid. It doesn't seem to move at all, and I've actually, as you can see, popped the car back into the garage. So I'd say that's pretty good success. I should say that we haven't been paid by Garadry to do this. We paid full retail price for the product as well, so we're not sponsored in any way. But I think overall, it's a fantastic solution, but I guess the proof's in the pudding. So let's see when the wind blows and all the leaves come in, whether this actually stops it. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like, give it a share, consider subscribing to the channel, because all those things help people see our content. As always, many thanks for watching and take care.